fish and livestock.
Most of the rural population farms on a subsistence scale, using small plots and depending on seasonal rainfall. A lack of infrastructure such as roads further exacerbates poverty in rural areas by isolating rural farmers from needed inputs and profitable markets. Almost all farmers in the main cassava belts of the southeastern, southwestern and central zones grow cassava, which is typically intercropped as a main or minor crop. Rotation and fallow systems are the traditional systems used by the farmers to maintain soil fertility, but population pressure has resulted in reduced fallow, continuous cropping and reduced soil fertility. Farmers are generally aware of the benefits of inorganic fertilizer, but the commodity is scarce and a major constraint in cultivating improved varieties. Farmers like these women leave the stalks of other minor plants like maize on the rows of their farm to decompose. They believe this will improve the soil fertility. Unfortunately, this is not the case.
Nothing of advantage that doesn't have its own disadvantage. Application of fertilizer to the plant is very good, but what that woman related her statement to is that the way the fertilizer is helping the crop is as well as it is helping the weed. That is what she means. To some farmers that cannot afford to buy fertilizer like NPK, they have their belief in using manure. When they remove, like the one we saw on the field, they arrange it at the furrow for decomposition. There will be adverse effects of it on their plant. That is, it will a little bit help the development of their crop.
She planted these cassavas 3 months ago, and from what has been seen, it is certain that her productivity will be very low. On the other part of town are rows of cassava trees planted at the same period by the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture researchers. The difference between them is crystal clear. Cassava experts say having improved variety is not enough. Knowing how to cut and space the seeds on the row is very important, a fact most farmers overlook while planting.
I've been breeding for cassava for 25 years, and the issue is we've come up with varieties that can give you up to 40 tons per hectare, which means the potential is in the varieties. Nigeria has released most of these improved varieties, extended them to farmers, but farmers are not getting that yield that are the potential yields of these varieties. Why? The agronomy is an issue, and there is need for that and farmers training to be able to practice those best agronomic packages to have their optimal yield.
To encourage farmers to leverage on the opportunity to improve the quality and quantity of their cassava, scientists at the IITA are recommending agronomy in cassava production.
When you plant, it germinates. One, you don't just plant any seed. You have to ensure that you plant good quality seeds. Agronomy starts there. And the way you plant and the way you take care of the plant when growing is all part of its management practice, which is considered agronomy. For instance, cassava is planted by means of cuttings. We call them cuttings from the stem. The way you cut that cuttings into plant inside will determine right from the time you do that the amount of yield that you can get. If you use a blunt machete and cut it so that that edge, that bottom of the cutting where you plant it is very rough and damaged, it affects the number of roots that will come out when it's starting to germinate. Right? And that number of roots, some will be roots that will extract nutrients for feeding the plant to grow. Then some will also specialize to be able to store starch, which is what is demanded in the tubers. So if you damage it, you have fewer roots, and if you have fewer roots, you have, for instance, 4. You want half 50% to become roots that will be supplying nutrients, and 50% it will be 2-2. But if you use a sharp object and cut it so that that ground bottom is fine, you'll have more roots coming out, say for instance 10. And if you say the distribution is 50-50, 55 of that will become feeding roots, and 5 of that will become tuberous root, which you call the tubers. So that's the logic. And that's just one. The angle at which you plant, the spacing at which you plant, which will give you the population. We used to be thinking that 10,000 plants per hectare is what you should have in the field. And so you should plant at 1 meter by 1 meter spacing, 1 meter between rows and 1 meter between plants. Cassava is a long duration crop. It takes 1 year, whereas maize, 4 months, you can harvest your maize, the early maize. But because cassava is a long duration crop, goes through that long period, it suffers from uncertainties. Heavy wind will come and knock some down. Animals, rodents, grass cutters will come and eat some up and knock them down. So many things, termites can come and destroy the roots and knock them down. So if you know that 10,000 plants is the optimum, and you know that it's a long duration crop, you may never get 10,000 hectares by the time you harvest 1 year after planting. Don't use 1 meter by 1 meter spacing, which will give you 10,000, but rather use 1 meter by 0.8, which will give you 12,500. And in so doing, by the time you're harvesting, because of the uncertainties, you will get 10,000 plants per hectare that you will uproot and have their tubers from them.
In sub-Saharan Africa, cassava productivity has marginally increased to around 10 to 11 tons per hectare, well below attainable yields of over 30 tons per hectare. With the need for intensifying cassava production in areas where population densities have reduced access to fallow land, and with cassava roots becoming important raw material for the processing sector, this yield gap needs to be reduced.